Washington, including a vote on the constitutionality of impeaching a former president. That will start the agenda today. We will have the latest on that in just a moment.
Plus, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki at it again, dodging questions about the future of Keystone Pipeline workers.
And how about this? It took Joe Biden less than a month as commander-in-chief to get a little bit creepy once again, this time to a registered nurse. We'll play you that sound in a minute as well. We talked about it yesterday, how many people call out sick on Super Bowl Monday.
Do you have the numbers for
I
that?
have the information.
What
I don't
is
even
it?
need to look down at my notes. 17 million Americans called in sick yesterday.
Did they really?
A record.
Even ones working from home.
Even people,
that is baffling to me.
Right? I mean, I think I would, if I could do this from home, I think I would try to slug my way through it if I didn't feel well. But 17 million.
Funny.
It's a lot of people. Yeah.
Maybe you stuck around with us.
It was
just
a good
didn't
game.
go anywhere.
That's right. Maybe you watch the show and you're like, I'm having so much fun.
I'm going to do that too.
I'm not coming in. All right, Rachel. We'll see you in a little bit. I want to welcome in our political panel on this Tuesday morning. We start with former Florida congressional candidate Ana Paulina Luna, back with us this morning. Editor-at-large at The Hill, Steve Clemons. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Morning.
Former Trump campaign aide Rick Gates is back with us, and constitutional attorney Amir Benno is back with us. Before we get into the more serious stuff on the agenda this morning, I want to play you a little bit of sound from Joe Biden yesterday. He was virtually visiting one of the vaccination sites, and he sort of got back into some of the creepy Joe Biden stuff that we've seen before. Take a look.
Are you a freshman at the university?
No.
You look like a freshman.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you for what you're doing. It really matters.
Emerald Robinson is with us in Washington. Emerald, we'll start with you as well. But he was virtual, so he wasn't able to smell hair or do anything like that. But still, just a bit. Kamala Harris looked uncomfortable.
I thought Kamala's, the vice president's face was kind of interesting. It sort of just stayed frozen during that exchange. Like, is he really saying this?
Right. We've seen the president do that before, back when he was vice president, of course, way back when he was a senator. All right, good morning, everybody. Steve Clemons, I want to talk to you a little bit about impeachment. It starts today, the second time in 14 months, in case you hadn't heard. So I just want to set the table here. So basically, there's going to be a debate over whether or not this is actually constitutional. We expect the Senate to vote in favor of its constitutionality. That remains an open question. And then both sides basically get 16 hours to present their cases. Steve, where are you on everything happening today?
Well, look, I mean, I would say that I'm in the camp that does believe that it's constitutional, and there are a lot of Republicans out there that feels it's constitutional. If it wasn't constitutional, it creates an interesting gap that a president of the United States, a future president, could engage in serious actions, like trying to take an election or, call out martial law or something of that sort and not be held accountable. I say this with some humility next to Amir, because Amir is such a great constitutional law commentator. But in my view, I think that, I'm with those that, despite many of President Trump's accomplishments, I think that this is a time that he did the wrong thing. And as some people said, as Chris Christie said, former governor of New Jersey, if this isn't impeachable, I don't know what is. So I'm in that camp.
Rick Gates, where are you with everything today?
Yeah, I would disagree with Steve. I think, part of the Constitution says the president has to be in office. Clearly, he's not. So at this stage, if we proceed under that manner and we were able to impeach a president that's been out of office, then we could go back and impeach everybody. And I think, look, there's two fundamental flaws, with what the Democrats are doing right now in this, kind of theater of the political absurd. This is more about PR and optics. I mean, they know they're going to lose. They know they don't have the votes, but they're continuing forward. I think today you're going to see a bunch of videos that they post. Hopefully the president's defense team will have a good defense, for a lot of the videos that you're going to see. But every constitutional lawyer I've seen out there saying this is not constitutional. So I think as we proceed forward today, I think you're going to see a lot of drama, a lot of theater, but very little substance from the Democrats.
Amir, there was a constitutional attorney that penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that said it is constitutional to impeach a former president. It was a fascinating article, but let's get your take.
Well, I'll agree that there's competing thought on either side of the ledger. I do think that the weight of authority supports it not being constitutional. One, because of the text of the Constitution, which Rick had mentioned. Two, because the intention of the framers who drafted the Constitution, they deliberately chose not to include language that would have made it explicit that a former official could be impeached. Third, because precedent doesn't support it. And fourth, because policy, in this case, if you want to get accountability and deterrence, we have a criminal system for that. There's absolutely no need for impeachment. As a practical matter here, they can achieve any of these policy objectives because they know that acquittal is a foregone conclusion. So this is, as either Rick or Steve said, complete political theater.
Yeah, and it's, impeachment is an act of Congress to remove somebody from office. That's how it's drawn up in the Constitution. Anna, I want to play a soundbite for you from Maxine Waters. The president's attorneys said yesterday that they are their eyes are red because they've been looking at so much video of Democrats doing things that could be construed as inciting violence. But here's Maxine Waters. I want to play it and then get your reaction. Maxine Waters talking after the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. But before January 6th, here's Maxine Waters and what she had to say when Donald Trump was still president. Take a listen. I have a feeling we're going to see a whole lot of that today.
I mean, I listened to that and I just really get sick to my stomach because there really is a double standard. But what's ironic about this is, what they try to say in President Trump with even addressing the crowd when he was speaking prior to the Capitol 6 or the January 6th events. He's no more responsible for the violence that occurred that day than I would say, Kamala Harris is for the overdoses that occur every single day in San Francisco. So to say that he would be, one, impeached for this, and then also, two, that he apparently had made statements which were recorded, he made no such statements calling for violence. So I think that that's really a gross representation of what the impeachment process is. And also, too, I think that this is another witch hunt. And I think moving forward that Democrats really have lost a lot of people because ultimately, if your message is unity moving forward and yet you're still chasing the former president and talking about the former president, I think it's time for you to move on. It's like breaking up with an ex-girlfriend. Move on and let it go.
I like what Ann is saying, but I just have to say for a minute, we can't treat this like it was just another day in Donald Trump's life where he did nothing wrong. He called for folks to take on the legislature. He did not accept the results of the election. He had 61 lawsuits.
Hold on, Steve, go ahead, and Anna will get your reaction.
In the legal side, I just want to say, to put it on the Democrats who say, well, if they want unity, look, I think this is going to be a complex and emotional time for the next few days, but we need to kind of keep reality in place. This was not an ordinary day in Donald Trump's life. He met with thousands of people. He said, go to the Capitol. So, and to stop the steal.
Okay, Anna, go ahead. Your reaction.
I was just going to say, Amir just knocked the socks off from a constitutional law perspective. The fact is that the president's no longer in office. Regardless of what antics the Democrats are putting forward, that ultimately, at the end of the day, the president did not stand there at the January 6th Stop the Steal rally and ask for the people to get violent or to do at the Capitol, period. End of story, non-impeachable. Let's move forward.
Well, and I think that if they were really serious about him having done something wrong, and besides trying to get publicity, I think there would have been a censure vote. And I think they would have gotten a bit of bipartisan support on that.
Steve, does it, Amir, jump in. I just have a question for Steve. Amir, I want to hear from you. But Steve, do you think this lowers the bar? I mean, what the bar for an impeachment now? Think about it. 4 years from now, we could very well have a Republican president. And does this put the bar so low for impeachment that every 4 years we see an impeachment if the other party doesn't like something, the party in the majority?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, I think the case for what we just saw in the last days of the Trump administration make a more solid case for impeachment than the earlier case of impeachment. Again, Rick Gates and other people have made an adequate point that, when you look at what the House did, that, again, you had another rush through the House without all of the proceedings you would have and the, contending witnesses. You had that rush, with folks like, where we didn't have subpoenas enforced because the House did not want to go through the process and take the time to do that. So in both cases of this impeachment, the legal process that they went through or didn't go through actually did lower the bar, other than, the case of saying, okay, did the president potentially commit impeachable offenses, which is a different question. But certainly it lowered the bar that when you see the process neglected and not taken. I think Amir has brought this up previously. Yeah. Then I think that has lowered the bar. But I think the causes, the president's behavior in certain cases, I think in this second case is very disturbing. And I don't know if there's a good answer that the Constitution provides.
Steve, I want to bring in Amir here. Amir, jump in.
Well, I just wanted to respond to something that Steve said a moment ago, which was what President Trump did and sort of whipping up this people to go challenge what the congressmen and the senators were doing. I mean, the Electoral Count Act is actually what provides the structure for what they were doing that day and what gives those Congress members and senators the right to object. This wasn't just Donald Trump saying object because I want to overturn the electoral vote. This was a measure of Congress that had passed this law, which allows them to do that. And Donald Trump was merely inviting the crowd to go and cheer on those members of Congress who chose to actually object. So to say that following the law is somehow an insurrection, I think is convoluted.
All right, Amir, Rick Gates, I'm going to give you the final thought, and then I cannot wait to have you guys at the top of the hour because this is a great conversation. But here's President Trump speaking on January 6th. Take a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity.
Rick, is that incitement of violence right there?
Not at all. And the video shows it all. And his statements, the president's words coming directly from his mouth, which they usually do, I think sum it all up. And I think if you look at the real impact here, the Democrats are going to really face, problems in the midterm. This is going to be a direct result, similar to the first impeachment, which cost Nancy Pelosi a net loss of 10 seats, in the House. And so the president's words were clear, and I don't think they could be any more clear. So there's no incitement. And this is exactly why the Democrats know they're going to lose today.
All right, panel, we got to leave it there. We will see you guys again in just a few minutes here on Wake Up America. A lot to talk about as President Trump's impeachment trial, the second one in 14 months, starts this afternoon. We'll see you guys all in just a little bit. When we come back this morning, we're talking about student loan forgiveness. Have you heard about this yet? This is going to impact the U.S. economy in a big way. If it happens, there are plenty of things to talk about on both sides of that conversation. We're going to dive into that next with our business and market analyst, Seth Denson. You're watching Wake Up America live on Newsmax.
Already, President Biden is moving quickly to overturn many of President Trump's policies. Newsmax is now conducting a national poll about Joe Biden, and you can vote. Let us know if you approve of the job President Biden is doing and how you think he compares to President Trump. Newsmax wants to know what you think. It just takes a minute to vote, so text us now and register your vote. Let America hear your voice. It's important.
Welcome back into Wake Up America. Happy Tuesday. Rachel is with us. She's got some rapid reactions. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Rob. So you Rob, yourself, and you at home probably for the past year and a half probably noticed the hashtag Free Britney floating around on social media. If you're unfamiliar with what it meant, it's all in hopes of uncovering the truth about Britney Spears' conservatorship. Now we're seeming to get a deeper look after the new documentary The New York Times presents Framing Britney Spears. Celebrities coming out in droves showing support for the unfair treatment she received throughout her career, like Meghan McCain, just tweeting simply Free Britney. We're also seeing the same from Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker. Now, those are just some of the simple tweets. Other people getting more in depth. We saw Tamron Hall saying what I think many people felt after watching, saying it's an understatement to call it heartbreaking after watching the framing of Britney Spears on Hulu. We're also seeing Miley Cyrus, if you remember, she was performing. This documentary is a gut punch. She says there were so many horrible men and leeches in her life. She listed them all here, you can see. And she went on to add saying that she's crazy grateful that her parents protected her as a young girl in this insane business. Rob, I'll also add that Twitter users are demanding apologies now from the press, from paparazzi, people like Diane Sawyer, Justin Timberlake, for the way they treated her and how it's being revealed in this documentary.
Have you seen the documentary yet?
So I started it. I have not finished it yet. I plan to finish it tonight. But the interview with Diane Sawyer was back in 2003, right after her very, popular breakup with Justin Timberlake. And the way it was handled in the media is not aging well, is what many people are saying online. The way Diane Sawyer presented her questions is actually baffling to watch. If you go back and watch it, it's shocking.
Yeah, I think just with Britney Spears, it's like, I was thinking about her when this came out. 25 years ago is when she was at her peak. It was the late 1990s.
I mean, she was 16 when Hit Me Baby One More Time came out.
Exactly. She was a minor when these songs were I mean, top of the charts. And it was a totally different time. And the way that she's been characterized is certainly fodder for criticism. But you forget how big she was. She was like Frank Sinatra in the 50s. I mean, she was huge.
She was into young
1990s.
girls, and then other people like Justin Timberlake, whose career just took off and never stopped, never hit any road bumps along the way, and hers took a completely different path.
It's interesting. She was so young then. She's still young now, 20 plus years later. All right, Rachel, thanks. See you in just a minute back at the desk. Let's get you caught up here on some stories making headlines on this Tuesday morning. Republican Congressman Ron Wright of Texas died on Sunday, just weeks after contracting COVID-19. Wright has become the first sitting member of Congress to die, now surging past $27 trillion. Think about that. But that's not stopping Democrats from pushing President Biden to cancel up to $50,000 of student loan debt for every eligible American who's got debt at that high number.
So joining us to talk about it is business and market analyst Seth Denson. Seth, welcome back to Wake Up America. So obviously a hot topic for a lot of folks. Chuck Schumer has been pushing for $50,000 in student loan debt to be wiped off the books for thousands. You know, what are you hearing about this, and what's your thoughts on it?
Well, listen, this has legs and it can be done, and this may actually be able to be done without congressional oversight. I mean, according to the Higher Education Act of 1965, the Secretary of Education has the right and the ability to effectively cancel debt if they see fit, held by the U.S. government in this way. So it'll be an interesting take. But let's go back to the numbers. I think that's really important here as you start to think about it. In the United States today, there's roughly $270 trillion in assets. $4 trillion of that is held by Uncle Sam. They're talking about canceling roughly 40%, almost 40% of the total assets. Now, under the Obama administration, the United States lost its credit rating from AAA down to 2A. And here's the reality. It looks like Biden may be trying to keep that trend, because if we cancel almost 40% of our U.S. held assets by the federal government, you can bet that our credit rating would go down.
All right, so right now, 43 million Americans have $1.6 trillion in student loan debt in this country. Obviously, big university is the one that I don't think gets talked about enough. We talk about big tech, we talk about big pharma. Big university is one of the biggest crocs out there right now. And I think about it 20 years ago, what I paid for college and the loans that I had to take out, it's just insanity. And that was a long time ago, relatively speaking. A lot of kids are saddled with a lot of debt. But what about the people that decided, you know what, I can't afford it, I don't want to be burdened by this debt, so I'm not going to go to college, or instead of going to, let's say, University of Nebraska, I'm going to go to a local trade school because I don't want debt. This is a free pass for many people that don't deserve it.
Well, that's right. And I think there's another thing to consider here, Rob, and I don't want to age myself and talk about what the cost of things when I was there, but it certainly has continued to inflate. And when the federal government started backing loans in the 60s, and then we kind of fast forward to the 80s when that really became more prevalent,
right,
the cost of higher education has more than doubled, almost tripled actually during that time. And so this is just more proof that when the federal government gets involved in something, the costs go up. And by just canceling debt, all you're doing is boosting up these universities that have increased that price. Until you start to address the thing that is inflated, canceling the debt doesn't do much good. And certainly we should have conversation about the cost of college and those that couldn't go or maybe went and it didn't work out. But all of that being said, you can't do this in a bubble and just say we're canceling debt, because, by the way, you're not canceling anything. You're just transferring the debt to the backs of the taxpayers.
That was my next question, Seth. This is another one of those double-edged swords. Well, like when we last talked about raising the minimum wage, on paper, at first, it sounds fantastic. More people get more money, right? Students don't have to pay their debt anymore, but it is just transferring that debt. Who's going to end up paying for it? American taxpayers?
American taxpayers, and sadly, because of the way that our debt is situated now and the amount that we have, it's not just us, it's our grandchildren and great-grandchildren that are ultimately going to pay for this. Listen, we're already way in the hole. The coffers are dry. There's no money.
Yeah.
But that's the big challenge here as you start to think about where this money goes. Who doesn't hurt from this? Big universities, as you mentioned, Rob, right? They're going to continue to inflate. They're going to continue to grow, and they're going to increase their tuition.
Yeah, it's the biggest scam out there is big universities. You're looking at it. Some of these schools are up around $70,000 a year. I don't care how much money. You got to make $1 million a year for that to be at all even remotely feasible and American, it's just the price of these universities.
One kid.
And that's one kid. What if you got, I've got two. They're a long way off from college. But I have a quick question for you. Then I want to talk about something else that happened we saw in the markets over the weekend. But is this, so Joe Biden countered saying maybe we'll do $10,000 instead of what Chuck Schumer wants, and that's $50,000 of student loan debt. Is that through executive order? There's some questions about the legality of doing that with the swipe of a pen.
Well, I think there is. So there's some IRS law, if we want to get technical, that came out in 1986 that may give him the right to do it. Certainly the thing that Chuck Schumer and some of the others are pushing for. But again, specific to federal loans related to debt, the Secretary of Education, based on the law back in 1965, very well may have the ability to do this on their own.
All right, so this past weekend, all right, Seth, I'm going to set something up for you. You and me, we own a business news network, all right? Let's call it something obscure. Let's call it Fox Business, all right? We've got a network together, and we've got a star, the most highly rated guy at the network. Let's just say, for sake of the story, his name's Lou Dobbs, okay? And he's the best rated guy at the network. He's a friend of Donald Trump's, and he supported President Trump throughout his presidency. We don't like that anymore because Joe Biden's in office, and we're trying to become a more center network, a more moderate network. So let's fire Lou Dobbs. What do you think? Should we do it?
You're trying to peg me, buddy. No, I don't know what's going on over at Fox Business. I've been a contributor and a part of their network a few times in my past too. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, there's more to this story. Something's going on when you're a top-rated person. Is it financial? Is it desire to take the network a different direction? Fox Business has been going through somewhat of an identity crisis for the next few years. And it looks like they're doubling down on that now.
Yeah. All right, Seth Denson, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Good to see you, Seth.
Hey, thanks, y'all.
All right, stay with us. A lot more Wake Up America coming right back your way in a moment. Keep it here. Good morning. Welcome back into the show. I'm Rob Finnerty. It is Tuesday, February the 9th. Welcome in.
I'm Rachel Ruller. Here's some of the stories we're following for you this Tuesday.
Yes, we have a very busy show lined up for you right now. President Trump will be, his trial for impeachment will start today for the second time in 14 months. Impeachment managers are set to deliberate over the constitutionality of this impeachment, and then it will move forward from there.
Plus, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki at it again, dodging questions about the future of Keystone Pipeline workers.
And it took President Joe Biden less than a month, 20 days, in fact, as commander-in-chief, to get a little bit creepy with a young female working at a vaccination site. We'll play you that video in just a little bit. Welcome back to the show.
I finally saw that video for the first time when you were talking about it with your panel.
Right. So I wanted to get. Now we have to play it because people are joining us right at.
We're going to have to play it again, of course.
But I just think it's one of the, when I look at the video, I look at Kamala Harris.
That's what I was going to say. I look at the vice president's face, and I think it's how I would react. Like, just stop. You're making me uncomfortable.
Yeah, she will play that video for you in just a sec. Rachel, we will see you in just a moment. I want to welcome in our all-star political panel. On this Tuesday morning, we start with our White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson, former Florida congressional candidate, Anna Paulina Luna, editor-at-large of The Hill, Steve Clemons, former Trump campaign aide, Rick Gates, and constitutional attorney, Amir Benno. Guys, we'll play that video for you a second. Steve, we're catching up for the first time since the Super Bowl. Were you stunned that the Clydesdales weren't as prominent?
Well, I was sitting there waiting for Rachel, who like me, was very disappointed the Clydesdales were not going to make an appearance, and I can't believe we started with impeachment and not the Clydesdales absent this weekend. So
Steve, I
understand the sentiment.
Yes, I think a lot of people felt that way. There he is, Steve. Good to see you. All right, Emerald.
Good morning.
We've got some. It's going to be another interesting day in our history. For the second time in 14 months, they're going to try to impeach President Trump today. Chuck Schumer said he wants to have this wrapped up by by Friday, which is laughable. The president in Florida, that's what I'm thinking about. But, it's already Tuesday. Do we think there's any possibility this is done by Friday?
I mean, it could be if there's not witnesses. It's going to be a different impeachment because remember last year, or the last time we were going through impeachment, we were all watching Twitter to see if there was a reaction from then President Trump in regards to the proceedings. And guess what? We won't be doing that this time.
Rick, here's a soundbite. This is Lindsey Graham, and this is from just after the Capitol Hill riots. I believe the date is January the 7th, so a day after those riots took place. And look, emotions were extremely high at that time. But let me play you the soundbite, then I want to get your reaction.
Impeachment is a political process. We've never impeached a president once they're out of office. I think this is a very bad idea. 45 plus Republicans are going to vote early on that it's unconstitutional.
All right, so many Republicans right after the riots were happening said that they might support impeachment. We know that many took the side of Democrats, but this could actually rally people back around the president and serve as something that unites Republicans.
Oh, I absolutely believe it will. If you look at what happened in the impeachment last year and the ultimate reaction by a number of Americans to this, people don't want to see our Constitution weaponized or politicized. And that's exactly what the Democrats did. And they paid a price for it in 2020. And I think they're going to pay a price for it in 2022 as well. So I think when you unroll it, what Lindsey Graham said was absolutely accurate. We can't politicize this process. And the more that we do, the weaker it makes our Constitution, and certainly it degrades the power of impeachment for something that could happen seriously down the road, with another president.
Anna, does this unite Republicans?
I think it does, at least the ones with the backbone. I mean, you have a lot of people that think right now, currently, that there's a foundation to impeach the president. But when you hear what he has to say, especially on that recording, which I'm so glad that we live in a modern era to where we have that evidence that President Trump said, for people to peacefully show up to the Capitol and support those that were voting against the certifying of the election. I mean, that's part of the political process. And if you don't like that, that's just too bad. That's what our Constitution is founded upon, our country is founded upon. And it's our obligation, if we don't agree with something, to make our voices heard peacefully.
Amir, talk us through some of the mechanics of what's going to happen today. There's going to be a vote on the constitutionality. We expect that to move forward, and then both sides get 16 hours to basically present their cases.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. They're going to vote. They're going to debate for 4 hours, I believe, today, or that's the allotment of time. Then they're going to vote on it, on the constitutionality. That's the threshold question. Most likely, the Democrats will prevail. That's sad for precedent and for our Constitution, but that's just the way it is. And then they'll get 16 hours each. At the end of that, then the senators can ask questions if they want to ask questions. And then if the House managers want to call witnesses, then they put that to the vote of the senators. And I think that they're all trying to avoid that situation. We saw what happened when they wanted to call Don McGahn and when they wanted to call John Bolton last time around, how that sort of delayed everything and got caught up in court. They want to avoid that. One thing I'll just say as to the unity point, I don't think that this is about unity. I don't think it's going to unify the Republicans. Frankly, I think that ultimately a vote as to whether to acquit or to convict is designed specifically to split the Republicans. And I think that's the ultimate purpose of all of this. It's not to disqualify President Trump from office. It's not to hold him accountable. It's obviously not to remove him, but it's to split the Republican vote.
Emerald, thoughts?
Well, I have to agree with Amir on that point, but I think that if we do see defections from the Republican Party to vote to convict, it's going to be the ones who are already vulnerable, who are already sided against the former president several times, like Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. So I don't think that it's going to split off anyone necessarily that would surprise anybody.
So do you think, Emerald, more on that quickly. So we had 45 Republicans side with the president a week ago. That number, personally, I expect that number to increase to be closer to 50. You said Collins, Murkowski, Mitt Romney obviously is going to vote with the Democrats. But we could see that number right around 47, 48, possibly even 49 once it's all said and done. Do you think that's accurate?
I think that's probably pretty accurate. And with the straightforward defense that the Trump legal team has planned, though some senators like Bill Cassidy have suggested that they're still open to a conviction, that they want to hear the evidence. We've basically seen the evidence. So unless there's anything major to shake it up, and it doesn't sound like there will be, based on the defense's plan, and we basically know what the House managers are going to do, that will probably hold pretty true.
I want to, Anna, play you a soundbite. Apparently, Joe Biden's not going to watch any of the proceedings, even though this is going to be the biggest thing and the only thing the media, especially some of the other networks out there, are talking about for the next week at least. Here's the president speaking yesterday.
Are you a freshman at the university?
No.
You look like a freshman.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you for what you're doing. It really matters.
Well, that was that soundbite that we were mentioning off the top of the segment there. Joe Biden asking sort of an awkward question to a woman that works at a vaccination site there. They had to view that site remotely. But Jen Psaki, I should say, was asked about whether or not the president will be watching the impeachment. If we have that sound, guys, go ahead and play it. If not, we can move on. But take a listen.
I think it's clear from his schedule and from his intention, he will not spend too much time watching the proceedings of any time over the course of this week. He will remain closely in touch with Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, a range of officials on the Hill about his plan, and that's exactly what they want him to do, is to remain focused on that.
Donald Trump is the biggest story in America once again. Shouldn't the president have some idea of what's going on over on Capitol Hill?
I mean, I think especially if they're planning on moving forward and uniting the country, he should have an opinion and not just rely on his press secretary to circle back. But ultimately, I think that moving forward, I mean, Joe Biden should be absolutely doing everything that he can to stop what's happening, because it does set a terrible precedence for future elected officials. I mean, who's to say that if Republicans don't gain, the majority in the House and the Senate, back that, what are we going to start impeaching people because we simply don't like them? I mean, it sets a terrible tone for the entire country. So, I mean, I would hope that he's a little bit more engaged, at least as engaged as he was talking to that young woman who was working and apparently doing the vaccines.
Yeah, I see. Do you see Kamala Harris's face too? She feels uncomfortable, and that makes me uncomfortable for her watching her face there.
Moment.
Yeah. Steve, I'm gonna let's say, so the point of impeachment is to remove somebody from office, right? So if you worked at let's say you worked at State Farm, for example, all right, and you quit 3 weeks later, because Joe Biden's been in office now for 20 days, 3 weeks later, if your boss called you and told you you're fired, would that be right?
Well, I think they're very different. They're very different jobs. Maybe not in the case of the State Farm case, but certainly when the president of the United States engages in behaviors. I'm in a different camp than my wonderful colleagues here today, and pretty open about it. So greetings all. I know I'm going to get a little bit of hate mail, but the bottom line is the president didn't want to accept the results of this election. He challenged them in courts and he lost, and then he took it to his people and sent them to the Capitol. This was insurrection. This is what Mitch McConnell has said. This is what Liz Cheney has said. And it went even further than that. When you look deeper than January 6th, you had every living former Secretary of Defense send a letter to the acting Secretary of Defense saying, do not bring the military into this, because there was reporting on the president talking to people about martial law. So there was a combination of things that this president did in the last days of his presidency, and he should, and that office should be held accountable, because it will send a signal one way or another to future presidents. He's not going to get convicted, but it's a it's more than performance theater. And I agree with Amir in the sense that I do believe that it's going to divide Republicans, but I don't think that's the purpose of this. I think there are a lot of people, including Biden, who would rather not have this right now. I think that he believes that the agenda right now for the nation is COVID and addressing COVID. So I know why Jen Psaki said what she did. She said she doesn't want to make it look like Biden has a vendetta against Trump. He may privately, but publicly he's got to be about the nation's business right now, which is killing this pandemic.
Emerald, final thought, then we're coming right back after the break.
Well, he's been pretty clear that he has a grudge against the former president in that CBS interview that he did before the Super Bowl. But look, it would be a very bad look for Joe Biden to even say he supported impeachment right now, because they were impeaching President Trump last year when the coronavirus was starting to make its way to the United States, and that needed to have been dealt with. And there were other things that were more important to Americans than that first impeachment. And again, Americans are in a really hard place right now. There's a lot of people who lost their jobs, continue to lose their jobs. And once again, the Hill is focused on President Trump and impeaching him. So this is not a good look for Democrats, and therefore not a good look for Joe Biden.
Emerald, let's be honest. They've been impeaching President Trump since June 2015 when he made his way down the escalator in Trump Tower. Yeah, I mean, this has been going on. Yeah, and counting. All right, panel, we'll see you guys in just a couple of minutes. You're back with us right after the commercial break. Looking forward to that. Here's what to watch for today. President Biden and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will meet with business leaders today to discuss that massive $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package. The Justice Department is expected to ask 56 Trump-appointed